Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another virtual DDD meetup. Today, we're joined by Zsofia, one of the organizers, and myself. We're going to have a dialogue. And Zsofia, you're going to do presentations about transforming business models in the pandemic. So, as always, people who are now in the Zoom for questions, please use the Q&A so I can keep track. I'll try to ask questions from the chat, so please chat away. And well, if you want to join in live, you can always raise your hand. And people who are watching this live on YouTube, just go away in the chat and ask your questions as well. So, shall we start?
Zsofia? Exactly. Yeah, we should. We can. Hi. So as Kenny mentioned, yeah, I'm going to how I planned this session actually, and I really hope that you can see my screen. Can you, Kenny, answer?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so how I plan this session is like going through on my presentation, which is like 20 minutes or so at most. But I'm also more than happy to take questions in the meanwhile if you have any. It will be about business models. I mean, the presentation itself will be about business models and transformation, especially during the pandemic. So I really hope it's an actual and interesting topic for now. And then I really hope we can have discussions about this, about your experience, about your thoughts, about your feedback, or anything regarding or regardless even. All right, so first let's just have a look at what business model is and why you might need to transform your business model. Business model basically shows how a company works. All companies work based on a business model. It doesn't need to be complicated or tricky or sometimes doesn't even conscious actually. So this model defines all the activities of the company, even if that's not conscious. And if the business model is conscious, then it can also act as a shared vision to keep everyone focused in the organization. And there is a great technique that helps us visualize the business model and the strategy. I'm sure many of you heard about the business model canvas or are familiar with, so I won't spend too much time on that, I swear. However, I'm a big fan of it. Great companies basically put huge emphasis on researching new business models and new opportunities behind it. And before a model becomes obsolete, so competitors could catch up, it's a good idea to have our next business model at hand and our next ideas. And in order to do that, basically you would, and in order to have the systematic research in terms of the next business model or innovation, you need a tool that helps looking at the business model in a structured way. And with the business model canvas, basically, this is what you get. So, and companies can perfectly map out the current situation in terms of the business, and basically for future innovation, they can have ideas based on that. All right, let's just quickly have a look how this is built up, because this is really needed in order to better understand the idea behind the business model transformation and the innovation, especially the pandemic one I mentioned. So let's start with the one of the most important ones, which is customer segments. Basically, who are the most important customers of the business? Then value. So what value do we create for these customers? Or channels? How does my value? How does the value get to the customers? Or revenue streams? How do I get paid for my product? It's a very important question, actually. Or customer relationship. How do we stay in touch with our customers? How do we stay in top of their minds? These are really the aspects that customers can see from outside, or that's actually how my business is seen from outside. The other part of it, it's rather the internal organizational aspects, like key activities. So what are the activities I need to do in order to get the value to the customers? Key partners, whom do I need in order to do that? What are my most valuable resources? And obviously, what are my costs in terms of this entire thing? These are, as I already mentioned, the internal organizational aspects of the business. This is less visible from outside of the business. I brought Uber as an example here, because I really like their business model, their two-sided platform model. And in general, I think they disrupted the market a lot. So yeah, it's just an example. It's not complete. Obviously, I just put it together from articles. So actually, their customer segments, that's why the two-sided platform, their customer segments, it's like riders and drivers. And the value proposition, Uber functioning as a middleman, kind of a middleman in between. Basically, they are serving both riders and drivers. They are serving value for them. For riders, it's safety and security. They are providing lower prices, estimated time of arrival, and also cashless ride, which I really like, or at least liked when Uber existed in Hungary, because it's not the case anymore, unfortunately. For the drivers, it's like opportunity to earn, freedom to choose working hours, for instance. Customer relationship is customer support, social media, reviewing, rating, and feedback system, which is also something that I really like. Channels, so they basically have a web application, mobile application. How do they get paid for this entire thing? Right, transaction fees, license fees, and so on. On the other hand, the internal organizational aspect is key activities like platform development, customer support, whatever, key resources like skilled drivers, the entire network where the riders and the drivers are their digital platform. For key partners, though, which is very interesting, drivers are partners. So basically, Uber is not a transportation company. They are a technology company, which means that the drivers are not the employees. Drivers are partners, as you can see on the business model as well. And obviously, they have costs, platform maintenance, marketing, and so on and so forth. All right, one last thing, or almost the last thing that you might want to check and consider from time to time in terms of your business model and the canvas, actually, which is the big risks in terms of that. So there are value risk, whether your customers will buy that, or usability risk, whether your customers will use it. So it's merged here in this example as desirability. So do customers want it or like it at all? Also, you need to check the feasibility risk, whether you can build the entire thing. And the last but not least, obviously, the viability, sanity check. So whether the entire thing makes sense or still makes sense, because you need to revisit this from time to time, in my opinion. And maybe that's the last thing in terms of the business models, which is there are different business model patterns, different ways how a company or how a business can be built up, how companies have their own dynamics. I brought a few examples here, but there are many others as well. For instance, unbundling here, where removing parts of the value chain that are less valuable for the consumers and only capturing the highly valued activities or highly valued parts. Just think of how Amazon unbundled the retail stores, right? Because in unbundling, the online retailer basically takes all the upside without having the downside of maintaining physical shops or stores. Or bundling as the opposite, so is to make consumers get the whole set of products and lock the consumers with that. How Windows does it, for instance, or Windows did it as almost the first. Or multi or two-sided platforms where there are more basically distinct customer groups, and it brings those customer groups together, like Uber, as I mentioned already, so drivers and riders, or Airbnb, like travelers and hosts, where company functioning as a middleman, so creating value by facilitating interactions between the two parties or more parties, it depends. Or other, like free business model, or freemium, where basic services are free, but customers pay for the premium services, like Spotify, for instance, free and premium users. or the free-to-play model, where the game itself and so to play is free, but companies selling actually products within the game, like Epic Games did that with the Fortnite. Or bait and hook model, where the basic product is cheap or free even, but others that are needed to operate the basic product are expensive. So if you think about a typical example, coffee, Nespresso, coffee machines with the pods, or even Gillette razor handles, where those are free, but the blades are pretty expensive. So I just wanted to mention a few business model pattern. Obviously, there are more. If you want to read through, I can recommend articles on that. But now, let's learn a bit about business model innovation. Why you might want to innovate? Obviously, to compete in the blue ocean. The red ocean naming, so it's coming from the cutthroat competition in existing industries, which turns the ocean bloody red. That's why the name, as opposed to blue ocean, where it's untainted by the competition, and definitely you might want to compete in the blue ocean rather than the red one. But how to do that? So this is the business model canvas again. If you look at your visualized business model, try to choose another area but the value proposition to innovate, like channels or revenue streams, or even think of innovating on internal areas, like, for instance, key activities. What if you could, for instance, co-create products with the customers, with your customers together? Like, think about it, how Nike did that with the create your own shoes thing, right? So do not always think about the new feature set or enhancements to existing ones in your product, but do think about innovating on some other areas, be it any section here or whatever. So you can have ideation sessions and then do the what if thing, you know, in every section. So for instance, look at how Amazon did that. They started with disrupting the channels for the books market. Instead of going to the bookshop to buy and pick your physical books, you could order them online, right? And get that delivered to by post initially to your home, basically. That was channel innovation. And Amazon kept doing this. So you could buy, or you can both buy and receive books on your Kindle. And now they are also experimenting with the drone delivery. So Amazon is mainly innovating on one single area of business model, which is the sales and delivery channels. But there are many other companies, like all these companies have something in common. They innovated on different parts of the business model canvas, not necessarily or not just the value proposition. Apple, for instance, their customer relationship, it's like offers great customer experience and customer service, or channel like only selling in their own stores, right? Or Amazon, as we just checked before, or Uber, we already talked about that they are a technology company and they have a mobile app, basically, so they innovated on the channel block as well, and also on the revenue model, which I haven't mentioned actually so far. So they have a dynamic pricing or on-demand pricing as well. Or Netflix, where they have personalization, so the customer relationship part is innovated. Or Starbucks has great and innovative loyalty strategies. Or Tesla is offering great customer experience. Or Airbnb, as they fundamentally changed the nature of the travel market. So really the best ideas happen when companies innovate on other areas, but not necessarily on the value proposition. I would recommend this. And there are many ideation techniques to do that, basically. Just before COVID, I used to do workshops or used to run workshops on these innovation techniques and how to innovate on the business model. I'm really looking forward to continue it after the pandemic. So these companies we talked about, they didn't really wait for an outsider to change their business. They looked at ways how to change it themselves. That's why they innovated a lot, or a huge one. It's worth to think big or consider crazy ideas even too when you ideate on the innovation part. Sometimes best ideas born this way. But what if you need to transform the business quickly because something externally makes you to change it after all? So like COVID made this with many businesses, and those businesses would, I mean, they could change. Those were the lucky ones who could change, as opposed to the ones that couldn't operate longer. Actually, there are many, unfortunately. So I brought a couple of examples here today from many different aspects. I'm really curious about your ones too, if you have any. For instance, car sales companies, like they turned all the communication channels to work phones, email, text, and Zoom. They're using FaceTime to accompany customers on test drives, or doing the deals online, and vehicle is delivered to your home. This is one innovation I wanted to mention here. Or Chipotle, which is one of my favorites, you know, the Mexican grill company in America. So they found out just in time, actually, that there are many restaurants that don't handle online orders or pickup. And they saw that, and they saw that this is something very needed during the COVID. So they founded this as a service. And what they do is providing these drive-through lanes for picking up the digital orders for the restaurants. So they haven't actually lost employees. The opposite happened. So you can see on the slide that 8,000 new employees in May and 10K more in July. So that's fantastic, I think. Or an e-commerce company who engaged DJs and other performers to do live shows online, which is not a huge thing so far, but viewers can get drinks with one click delivered to their doors, which is rather better, I think. Or as gatherings are typically canceled due to the pandemic, so virtually there is an entertainment company, or there are more entertainment companies probably, where they create and maintain these virtual escape rooms where people can compete in teams. And they also did a digital game where college students can explore their campus virtually and compete to answer quizzes and questions and solve puzzles and these kind of things. Or my favorite, my personal favorite is Soul Cycle, which used to be an indoor cycling class, but now they deliver bikes to your home, actually. So they billing monthly for it. You need to subscribe for minimum 1 year, as far as I remember. They have a mobile application for the biking experience, and they also provide 30-day trial. They also coordinate the returning if you don't like the experience. So this is also something that helps building the engagement with the product and with the company as well. And they also come up with different accessories you can order from them. And this is also built up on the biking experience at home. So I think this is a great innovation on the business model and also on the services they provide. Or workshops needed to go online too. For some of the facilitators who are creative and run great workshops, like for instance, Nick Tune, this was an opportunity to come up with new creative ideas. You can read more about how he runs fantastic online workshops in his blog. So this QR code is pointing there. I'm really sad that I couldn't do online workshops last year. I had very poor internet connection in the entire year, but I was reading Nick's blog on these online workshop topic, and it's really interesting. And I'm really looking forward to try it out finally, to do online workshop. But I think many of us are familiar with this, that workshops needed to go online too. And we need to transform the entire method we are doing the workshops. Or the ones where the transformation was more straightforward, maybe. For instance, I think we all see these examples that waiters and waitresses at restaurants are the ones now who help in delivering the food, which makes perfect sense actually to keep the place working and open, right? Or we used to go to the gym. Now our personal trainer gives online classes, or gyms going online and giving their classes by online streaming. Or similarly, the cooking classes, you can get it online. But there are businesses that were originally online. They didn't need to transform that much. their business, but there were rather new problems arise. So they needed to face with, for instance, dealing with the increasing number of the orders as people started to order pretty much everything online, right? Online shops started to struggle with serving that many customers with delivering to their doors. And how did they solve this? So they, with the click and collect, so online shops that providing delivery and got overloaded with the orders and couldn't serve those delivering, like Tesco, IKEA, and many others, I think, they introduced the click and collect solution or option. Or video banking became more popular these days. Also, banks are offering more services online than previously throughout this video banking thing. Or what we are just doing now, actually. So meetup.com and Zoom integration. So organizers can easily do online meetups without needing to subscribe to Zoom separately for extra money. It is now included in meetup.com. So in their membership, just one click and you have created an online meetup. Or online education, or WebEx is a great example, or at least an example I'm meeting on a regular basis. They scale much better than previously. So they put a great emphasis on this, on scaling, and they can handle meetings with a much bigger number of participants. That's why they managed to do the online education support as well. So as far as I saw, they can easily handle hundreds of active participants already, which wasn't the case before with WebEx. Or companies that managed online events. Some of those innovated with virtual conferencing to provide the feeling that you are in a real conference. To be honest, I'm not sure whether this existed or was this popular before COVID, but now it's definitely something useful and likable, as it seems from here. My biggest takeaway here is that as I saw and read in many of articles, and that these companies who successfully transformed their business wouldn't go back and do things like they did before COVID. This was really a big takeaway for me, and the lessons learned. So basically, they wouldn't do things in the same way as they did before. And if there is a situation like COVID and there is a change, you either way need to face with and deal with. Don't just accommodate, but try to look ahead, try to think ahead, and try to ideate how you can take the advantage of it. Think of Chipotle again, or Soul Cycle I mentioned. All right, most of these companies during COVID innovated on channel part, as I mentioned. So how their products get to the customers, and why they did that? Simply because that is the one that had been influenced by COVID the most, as people cannot meet, right? Gatherings are forbidden. Do you think it would be the same result if these companies, C-level people, for instance, would sit down and ideate on the business model business innovation? So before COVID, before anything happens, they would sit down and ideate on the innovative ideas. So I'm just wondering whether it would be the same result. We already mentioned Soul Cycle. I also put their business model canvas together. I guess this is not complete, but we can use that for the sake of the example right now. There is an ideation technique you can use and build on the top of the canvas and your business model to come up with new ideas. This is called escape thinking. I'm not sure how many of you heard about that. In terms of business modeling and the canvas, I usually facilitate it let's just remove one thing from there and imagine the business without it. So let's just remove something from here, from the canvas, and let's just create a new canvas by imagining that one thing that you removed, it's not existing in your business. It's a great technique, actually. You can try it out with whatever you want, not just the business model, obviously, but anything. For now, let's just imagine if, for instance, Soul Cycle's business development people just sat together before COVID and would have just used escape thinking when ideating on how to transform their business. And as part of the escape thinking, they would eliminate the studio itself. So the place where people went to for indoor cycling, right? Would they come up with the same result as they have now? Would they ever think of taking bikes to people's home and doing the class online? What do you think? I would leave it here. That was my presentation. I hope I could keep that relatively short. And I really hope that you have some ideas or thoughts or anything to discuss here. Yeah, I just switched back to this slide because yeah, this is something that made me think about whether it would be the same result if these companies would start the innovation, or for some reasons they would need to innovate before COVID. But any topics in terms of this, more than welcome, and let's just have a discussion on it.
Good. Thanks. That was really interesting. So one question that popped up, so we have a couple of questions here. Let's see if we get some more questions in. So we're opening it up now for the dialogue. So please raise your hand or ask questions. But here, Manuel asks, is the business model always on company level, or can it be done on product level, multiple business models per company, etc.? So what do you think?
I usually do that even with feature level. So when I'm not sure whether the question is specifically for business model canvas or in general like a business model thing, but for instance, I do it on a regular basis for my feature developments as well. So oh, I forgot to introduce myself actually. I'm working as a product manager, and I really like to use this business model canvas technique for if any new feature comes in. I really like to check what are the customers or who are the customers who will use that, what's the value in there, how will the value get to the customers, because it's not straightforward that in every feature will get to the customers in the same way. So I think it really depends on the context, and you can use it for everything. I would say, I mean, in software development for mapping out a current situation of the business and have a starting point for innovation, or just if you go to the new company to work for, and you want to assess the business unit or the unit where you are going to work. So it's a great technique, because at least, so obviously you don't know, I mean, you know almost nothing about the business unit if you go to a new workplace, or you are lucky if you know a few things. But then I would recommend to just start for instance, business model canvas and try to fill it up. And if you have questions, a lot of questions you will have, I guarantee, but that's great. So if you have a list of questions, then you can go ahead and ask, right? Already. So I really like to use that in many cases and for many different cases or parts of in my professional life as well as maybe private life.
Yeah, so someone said all these companies that you mentioned, right, are large and don't have to disrupt the market to stay massively profitable. How does apply this what you said to a startup?
Let me check something. Having mentioned the startup thing, I also wanted to show something, but I'm not sure whether I have it in the presentation. One sec, because there is a this business model canvas works for companies who that already working and functioning, but for startups, it's much more recommended to use a lean startup canvas. Why can't I? Anyways, one sec. I'm going to search for it and share then.
Yeah, so a lean
the lean startup canvas. One sec. I have it in my presentation. Actually, it's just I need to. Okay, so I'm sharing again. Hopefully.
Yep, I see your screen now.
Okay. So this is Uber example in a lean startup canvas. So I pretty much thought before, jumped back to the time before, so when they were a startup and they started the entire thing, and I imagined how they would fill up a lean startup canvas. So you can see that it's a bit different from the business model canvas. For instance, on the left-hand side, they have the lean startup canvas have the problem space. So what is the problem I try to solve here with my startup, with my idea? The solution next to it is like, what is the solution, or what will solve this problem? What do I think will solve this problem? The matrix underneath is just like, how do I measure success, right? So what are the numbers I will be happy about when my solution is in place? What will tell me whether this solution is successful? The unique value proposition, is the same actually, like business model canvas. The unfair advantage, because if you remember in business model canvas, there was the customer relationship, but if this is a startup and building up from scratch, actually they don't really have, or rather, so customer relationship doesn't make sense in that way. As I mentioned on the business model canvas, it's rather the unfair advantage. So what makes my idea or my startup hard to copy? So what was that unfair advantage, let's say? And the other things are pretty much the same. So if you also, what I mentioned previously, that I use that for features, new features. If that's a brand new feature set, what I'm working on, or what I'm going to be working on, I rather use this lean startup canvas, because it has the problem space defined, and the solution, and the metrics. And whenever I start a new feature, like working on a new feature, I really like to also define the KPIs for that. So what are the key metrics that will tell me that it's successful at the end, right? So yeah, I would advise to use this if you are in a either for startup or for a completely new idea feature set. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope that answered the question.
I hope so.
Yeah, so going on about this lean startup canvas and business model canvas, what's the difference between a business model, a business case, and a business plan, according to you?
Sorry, I just couldn't hear you well. So what's the difference between?
So what's a business model, a business case, and a business plan?
Well, a business model. I'm not sure about what you mean on the business plan. So you mean the plan for, like, the strategy as plan?
Yeah. So maybe the person can answer what they mean with the business plan. But let's start with business model and business case. I think those are more concrete.
Yeah. So business model and business case. If I'm not even sure what the business case here means, because a business case, like business use case, like the business opportunity, let's say, or
yeah, I think it's classically right when you want to, but that's my interpretation. When you want to start something new or a new product, you need to come up with a business case, return of invest, and come up with a total. Well, maybe that's the plan. I'm not sure. Come up with a plan how you conceive it. But that, I think, with a business model canvas, but that's how I see it. You actually written your business. It's actually an input for that business case, perhaps, right?
Yeah,
However,
you can capture that this way, because
I don't always believe in return of invest in business cases, but that's on the side, because you cannot predict future return of invest.
Yeah,
return of
exactly.
investment in most markets almost. Yeah, so I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. And business models are the ones what is used for strategize. So strategy, and based on the business model, and especially if that's visualized, for instance, on business model canvas, but on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter, but it's visualized, and from there you can really start the planning. I mean, planning, looking forward, and have the strategy in your head. And really, if you have some ideation session with others and not just doing it yourself as a CEO or whoever, actually it can bring great results. So really what you just cannot think of alone.
Yeah.
I particularly really like the escape technique I mentioned, but also there are other great techniques building on each other's ideas, or really just looking at the business model canvas again, how surprising, and ask what if. So in each and every section you can ask what if, and you can really come up with crazy ideas and change everything in that particular section, and how would your business look like. So yeah.
Cool. So then there's two people that like the idea of challenging the business model canvas by removing one item, right? Then the first question is, what would you recommend as the most interesting section to remove an item?
It's or the sections, I think, because in pre-COVID times, I didn't really thought of like removing the entire channel section, for instance. Oh, for some reasons I cannot go back.
Yeah,
Okay,
how it works.
one sec. I want to jump to the
Yeah, and that's the second question there. Would there always be a rippling effect throughout the rest of the canvas? Right. We'll go into that later. So first one is, what would you recommend as the most interesting section? So you were talking about the channels, right?
Yeah, because I really anything. Like, what if you remove like key activities, right? So what if your company, your people won't do anything from now on in order to get the value delivered to the customers? Well, it can be also an interesting brainstorming, right? So how do you solve that? If you don't do anything in terms of that. I mean, the key from I don't know, something from key activities, or if you remove like your main activity, like developing the platform, for instance. I'm just talking out of context, but removing the development of the platform, so it could mean that you are going to outsource something, and then it also starts a lot of interesting discussion from that time. But yeah, so channels which we didn't think about previously, like the complete channel will be removed because people cannot meet. It's really an interesting one. Channels, and yeah, or you can come up with completely new customer segments. You I don't know, from Soul Cycle example, you would remove the fitness lovers and the people who are up for a challenging workout, and only the muscle lovers remain there. And how do you find new customer segments? There you could have an ideation session. So yeah, I think many possibilities in there, or opportunities in there. And it really depends on the people as well, on the session, or in the discussion, right? So maybe you will have totally different results if you sit down with your, I don't know, engineering team to ideate on that, and you sit down with the C-level executives, and obviously you will have different results, but both can be something that you consider in your business strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was a previous note there, and I think it's popping up there again, is drivers are resources and partners at the same time, question mark. I don't see it here, but maybe in another one we should.
Well, they are. So they are pretty much the resources. So key resources is everything that you need in order to get your value to the customers. It also includes the in this example, the drivers, as well as I don't know, the platform itself, the mobile app or whatever. And yeah, they are also partners, because drivers are not employees but partners, and they basically are the ones who maybe they are in contract with the Uber company. So
yeah, and that goes into that second question from the chat is, so there's resources from partners can appear almost as own resources because you have a solid partnership. You can count on your partner's resources, but how to build solid partnerships efficiently? Uber has super simplified it.
it's a great question. I mean, I could invite other participants, and I mean, if anyone here in the audience to discuss this, I mean, if anyone has ideas.
Yeah, because I can imagine they are going on to that thought is that if you depend on resources from key partners, then it takes a bit away your own autonomy there, right? Which there are a lot of companies actually that do that, but like a broker function, right? That mostly that depends on others.
Yeah. So, but do you have any examples? I mean, any examples, or even their own company needed to transform? Or I would be very curious about this, because I'm really wondering about that, whether it would be the same result if they would think of it before COVID. But
well, the interesting part was that just before COVID, we did a meetup with virtual DDD and say, well, online event storming never works. Well, guess what I do weekly now?
yeah, I don't think Alberto could imagine the entire event storming workshop without a physical wall or physical modeling space, right? Escape thinking, Alberto.
I was doing it before. It's only that I still think physical is way better because you can spot. Because people still need to get used to how to get the signals out of a virtual. It's so novel, right? To do these things virtual and especially diving into the conflicts, because that's the most essential part, in my opinion, especially the big picture. It's still a lot harder to resolve in an online setting. But yeah, you need to. You're forced. There's no, how do you say it? We can all just go back to work, but that doesn't help as well. So.
Yeah. But if you think about, for instance, Amazon innovation, so how they disrupted the market with many years ago when they first introduced the online orders and delivery. Yeah, so if they would sit down and do the escape thinking, and maybe they did, then they did remove the bookshops and the shops, the retail shops themselves. So
yeah,
basically, yeah, that's what they did. They just closed the channels.
yeah,
Right?
maybe there's an interesting take, maybe with Wortley mapping. I'm not sure there, because
Yeah,
within Wortley
exactly.
mapping, you can see evolution. So you might, within the landscape, you might see evolutions of your, well, of the how do you call it, the other the competitors, or like in this case the bookshop, and say, well, they're in inertia and they're about to be disrupted. A lot of companies who don't see their problem being solved online get disrupted by that evolution.
Yeah.
And evolution always happens, is what Simon Wortley says. So
exactly.
maybe there's a good interaction there, right? So map it out, and then according to your map, scratch something from your business model canvas. I'm not sure.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to mention, I just forgot that this can be a very good basis for the word mapping, because you can build up the basis of the word map from here. So based on key activities and the feature set, like in the value proposition. And from there, you can ideate on where to transform, where to go in the map, in how to strategize the entire thing. So whether you want to transform something within your activities and feature sets to be a commodity, for instance, or you want to experiment with some other new custom things, or you can definitely go to word mapping direction from here.
Yeah, and going on to that question by Lawrence, right, about removing something from the canvas. are there any rules, guiding principles, models that can help people think about these effects and how they interact?
You mean the escape thinking? So if you remove something?
Yeah, like removing a channel leads to key activities becoming unnecessary, impossible, customer relationships changing, etc. Are there any rules guiding? Because there's a ripple effect. So are there any guiding principles, models that can help people think about these effects and how they interact with each other?
At least not that I'm aware of. What I always do and say and believe is that the people there whom you ideate with, basically their imagination can direct these things, and that's why it's really nice, and that's why you can so go into many directions, and really depends on even crazy ideas.
Yeah.
That's why I like, maybe I mentioned it too many times, but that's why I like to emphasize that the crazy ideas more than welcome in these sessions, because not just on the workshops, but obviously if you do it seriously, when you're figuring out how to go forward with the business or whatever, because what we just talked about just a few minutes ago, so how Amazon did that with the channels, like they just cross out the bookshops or whatever. So it could seem crazy idea at that time, right? So someone came in and said that, what if there are no bookshops anymore? But yeah.
Yeah, and this also reminds me of a talk, and I'm trying to look it up, but I got introduced by Dave Snowden's Kinevin course to constraints as key innovators, right? And there's David saying in chat that resisted delivering the in-person training because because I felt convinced the learning experience would not be as rich for the trainees, but demand was high. So that constraint actually forced the business model to grow. And just looking it up, but and that's an interesting, I think maybe what David says in chat, right, about these constraints that help you innovate. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Really. So I haven't done that online. So I mean the workshop itself, because since COVID, I just mentioned that I had a poor network connection the entire last year. But yeah, I'm just not sure how online it could, I mean, how it could work online. I mean, the ideation itself, because it's so good to, when you are there in person and just building on each other ideas and these kind of things, but maybe it works as well online. I haven't tried it. Because for, as I mentioned, I use the business model canvas technique for features and new development directions. Actually, yeah, that's I usually do it with 2 or 3 people at the workspace, so it's actually not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I was giving workshops as well for people in lockdown in India who also has a rough network connection, or they were sitting on a mobile phone, and you want to do visual collaboration. So how are you going to do that? That forces you to think differently. And there's a great book called The Remote Facilitator, book by Jay Allen and Papares, and they were here in this virtual DDD show, and they mentioned the same, right? These constraints actually help you to improve these workshops as well. So I just added that, constraints that enable innovation, by Alicia Huarero, if I pronounce that correctly. I'm not sure. Just posted in chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a really interesting take, that, and that's actually what you're doing, right? You're introducing a constraint in the business model canvas by purpose, and then see, okay, how do we need to do that? And you're actually, well, I'm a big time fan of Stoicism, and in Stoicism you always look from what can happen in the future, not to worry. So that's a different. So not to worry, but just to prepare. And that's actually
there's this mapping I know Dave Snowden does as well. I'm not sure how it's named, but just mapping out the future and going back or something, right? Just looking at what are all the things that can happen, and the business model canvas can really help you there. Can imagine what you just said, right?
It helps you
Removing
structure
something
your
from the
thoughts.
canvas, yeah, and
Yeah.
now just map out what are these scenarios that we can change our business now if this is happening, and should we create some experiments with that, right? Probe
Yeah.
these new. So that's actually a really nice.
Yeah, I should have done that with my workshops, right? So filling up the business model canvas and just escape thinking, like removing the fast internet connection, right? And then trying to ideate what I can do there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so shall we do another? Yeah, actually, Christine says constraint that enable innovation. That's what all governments are struggling to understand now, and some do well and some do not.
Yeah.
Shall we do another question? So, what is more common? Companies start with an outline and grow their business model over time, or companies spend time designing the business model up front and don't build until ready?
This is also a good question. I would be curious about. I mean, which is more common? I mean, I'm also reading the question actually, but if you have any ideas, yeah, it's great discussion topic actually. If anyone has thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I'll post the questions in the chat as well, so that people can see at it.
Probably a mixture would work better, but yeah, I'm not sure what is the reality. I mean, what's the more common here?
Yeah, it also depends. If so, the question would be: would this company be totally new, like a lean startup, right? Or would this company already exist and want to change?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I know that if you look at all the theory, complex theory from Dave Snowden and Kinevin, right? They're saying you want to probe as much as possible, and especially in the complex domain, you want to be coherent on one hand, meaning, yeah, we all believe in it, sort of. There's a bigger explanation, and you want to follow up with data. So you want to probe and make sense if this business model actually works. So you want to test that out and see what hits in a coherent way.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, yeah, and I think that's. I'm not sure if that's more common, because basically what's more common,
yeah, that's
people,
we don't know.
People copy pasting the Spotify model, but it doesn't actually mean that that's the better thing to do. So there's actually a difference between what's common and what's the best thing to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was the actual everything. Everyone does that thing.
Yeah, so here, while we're talking about mapping things, I feel like it's very useful to map out mentally and formalizing as much as possible all the connections, because according to the Parabasi Albert model, way too high formalized stays, but it's still okay. Well, I don't know this one. It's interesting. Individual performance is bounded, but success is unbounded because it lies not in the performance, but the network. Yeah.
Is that in YouTube? I mean, the question?
No, it's on the chat here in the.
Oh, chat. Zoom. Okay, I was looking for Q&A. Oh, okay.
So about that, there was this interesting. Sorry, I'm now looking for that as well. So my brain is not popping up things at the moment.
Mine either.
Quite fastly, but quickly looking up something by that mapping, and maybe I cannot see. Peter can explain more about this Barabasi Albert model, because I don't know about it. But
yeah,
there's this nice mapping technique I did at Ruth Malan, her workshop, actually, and I really like that one. That I think that also goes into what you were just saying, Peter. I'm looking at rich picture. Rich picture. Creating a rich picture out of that.
Maybe if people like this topic,
maybe we should try.
I mean, this entire business modeling and innovating ideas and these kind of things, we can have a session where we could actually do something together. I mean,
I think that would
a
be
business hacking a business model, right? We would be the new Amazon here.
Yeah, we could try. Maybe
Yeah.
someone has an interesting use case, right? So similar to what. Let's see if we can find a real business case and see.
Yeah. So I'm
So,
open to do that with any businesses, so we can figure out something. We can do a fake business or an existing business, like imagining it would be ours, and we could like C-level executives would sit down and we are now at innovating on the business model. So I'm okay with, or more than happy to do any of these if there is a demand for that.
Well, we can at least try and see. And we were wanting to do more personal, hands-on, like non-recorded ones, so that people can feel maybe safe, like one we did with Diana. So we can set up one of these, I think, and just try out this stuff.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do.
Yeah.
It was also great to put together these business models. Like maybe those are not similar like the real ones for Uber, for SoulCycle, for instance, because I mapped that out. But yeah, it's a fun to put that together and imagine that. Yeah, you are you are owning that company. Yeah.
So another question by Manuel is: what have successful business models in common that unsuccessful business models don't have? Really broad questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to answer these ones, because if I could answer that just this way, I would be probably rich, or I would own one of the companies that have a very successful business model. And but
yeah, so I see Christian saying timing, right? And I think actually there's one thing there. So it's a matter of timing, and it's a matter of well, forcing the timing as well.
And really, you need to believe that the idea there, or the thing that you're trying to accomplish there will work, right? So you need to believe even in your crazy ideas, because otherwise you cannot do that, or it won't be successful. So even if you do crazy things on business model canvas or whatever visualization you have, you need to believe in that. I mean, not just you, but your team, your company, startup, whatever, or that few people you are ideating with. And that's a key thing. Because I can come up with very good idea. I mean, good and crazy ideas at the same time in terms of any business model canvases. But yeah, it's not. I'm not there that I can I mean, it's not feasible for me, because I'm experimenting with other business models. So
yeah. So, but there's also a thing like what you say, you need to believe in it, and sometimes it's timing, it's also connection. It's rather complex, but it's this blend of several stuff being at the right moment in time, at the right place, right?
Yeah.
These things, but it's also one interesting experiment I read recently in the Netherlands. We say, let's see how I can translate. So you can enforce luck. There was actually an experience that you say you can enforce luck as long as you believe that you're lucky. Now it doesn't quite work, because the setting needs to be right, but then you also need to find yourself and believe in it, because else you won't see the opportunity as well. So what they did was actually within a supermarket, they lay down a $100 bill, and then they put 3 groups in. One group, they found themselves really lucky. The other ones don't find them lucky, and there was a control group. The people who find themselves really lucky, they found the $100 bill, and the other group didn't. It was also a control. So that's also an interesting one. Is yes, it's timing, it's expertise, it's knowledge, it's connectiveness, like Peter I think said, that Barabasi Albert model, which I don't know yet. But it's all these things, but also, yeah, you need to believe in it.
Yeah, but as COVID came and basically made many businesses to transform,
Yeah.
even if they didn't
Yeah.
want to, you
And-
can basically think the same way, like looking at the business model and just say, what if another, I don't know, outside effect, like a new regulation come
Well,
in?
20 years ago it was the internet bubble. Or 10,
Yeah,
20 years ago it was the internet bubble that
yeah,
disrupted.
exactly.
Every time
Exactly.
there's something that will disrupt again, and then you'll lose companies and then you gain companies. That's how it goes.
Yeah. I was ideating with new regulations that sound really crazy, and what I can do with the business model in terms of that. For instance, in case of the Soul Cycle one, because I was experimenting with that one. So, for instance, if there would be a very silly regulation, like, I don't know, you cannot do indoor cycling under 20 years or old or whatever. If there would be a new regulation like this, how would you transform your business model as Soul Cycle in order to, best support the people aged above the 20? Or I don't know. So it was just a crazy idea, but maybe, yeah, COVID, we didn't even expect these kind of COVID things, and it just happened.
No. Yeah, and I think a good one to also relate it a bit also to the software, right, is if you look at the business model canvas and do the what if statement and do what, you should look it up how Dave Snowden looks, but look at, okay, what if this happens? How fast could we actually move with our current software landscape, right?
Yeah.
That can also be nice to see, well, if we're really should we invest on making the landscape more decoupled, and where's our pain, and what if this changes, what does it do with our domain model, and
Yeah.
can we easily change our business and then change our IT with it, or is that really big ball of mud in the middle of our thing actually in the way? And right, look, if there's something new pops up, right? I can imagine something new pops up and you say, well, that legacy big ball of mud, well, legacy is not per se bad, but if that big ball of mud is isolated and we could just pinch something into it, well, then, well, why would we? Everyone's always complaining we need to refactor that legacy or that big ball of mud. But actually, if you look at your business model canvas and try to transform that and see what that does with your current landscape, then you have your answer there if you need to refactor or remake it, right? But exactly. It can also be, it's something, the cost of change is something, Jay Bloom, I was in a workshop with Jay Bloom, and wow, I forgot his name.
But things not popping into your mind now, you said.
Ben, sorry. Ben. So, and we were talking about that cost of change, right? And looking at, okay, if something really hits, what is your cost of change here? Can you really quickly move, or should we move this ourselves? So some people might say, well, we have something in house now that we're building ourselves. It's actually custom made, like, I don't know, something that's already a capability in the market. Should we also change that to get it off the market or not? Would that actually help us being able in the future to transform our business more easily?
Yeah, or this can
So
actually, yeah, sorry.
No, this has a one-on-one relationship with your architecture, right?
Yeah,
with your software
exactly.
architecture and your design, and that, I think that can really help.
It can also give you ideas for the different context maps, for instance, because what I just mentioned, I'm not even sure in terms of which slide anyways, but if you, for instance, remove one of the key activities, which would be like, I don't know, customer relationship or whatever, if that key activity doesn't exist at your company, as so you are not doing that at the company, but you are eliminating that, it would mean maybe that you are going to outsource it, and it would change your context map as well, because it could be a generic one from that time. I mean, if you have the context like customer relationship, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, But yeah, it can also influence your context maps and everything, basically, from speaking about the architecture. And what I also wanted to mention, maybe I forgot. You gave me some ideas. Anyways, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that's what you always in the past also provided to the DDD community is teams could do this themselves, right? This and see.
Yeah.
And that brought me my insight as well now. Sorry, is if you have some architectural questions or trade-offs you need to make, maybe this frame of the business model canvas can help you drive the right decision or drive the right model to choose. Should we do this or not? Well, let's see if we can come up with some scenarios, some future scenarios.
Yeah, and
to see what does that do.
And what is the worst thing happen here is that you can hardly fill up a business model canvas or anything that's a frame there, and you will have a bunch of questions, which is basically great as well. Great result, because you can go ahead and ask that from the people who might know the answer or can direct you into the, pointing to the right people or anything. I really like to use that for gathering questions as well. No matter whether it's a lean startup canvas, business model canvas, or just structured thinking. But yeah, it can generate a lot of questions.
The thing by Dave Snowden, by the way, is the future backwards.
Future backwards.
Yeah. So if you Google that, you'll probably find what it means.
There will be a lot of future backwards now.
Yeah. So
looking back.
Well, no, it's more like looking to the future and then turn it around. I think that's my naive one. I've never tried it, but it's one of the methods that has been used for lessons learned, historical analyze, context setting, and a range of other uses. So, yeah, might help.
Yeah.
And that's my novel know-how of it. But I know within Stoicism, they look at what could happen in the future and then just map it backwards, right? Really map it backwards and see what steps did we take to come there.
See,
how can we prepare?
Yeah, if a business would imagine a pandemic, I mean, back in time, 2 years ago.
Yeah. What would be a good to do?
Yeah.
Good. So, are there any more questions from the audience?
I'm pretty sure I have my homework here, the Barabashi and Albert model.
Yeah.
To learn about it. And also we set up a new meetup for the practical things. So
yeah, let's set it up and try it one time. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. Good. So let's close it up. I would like to thank everyone that joined and gave ideas, insights, and especially questions. I really enjoyed the insight you gave of just removing something from the business model canvas, see how it does. And, really like to see that impair myself for cost of change, right? What if this happens? What is the cost of change?
Right.
That's a really interesting one. So thanks. And well,
thank you.
now that your internet is more stable, we'll see more of you in the virtual
from now on.
For everyone, in 2 weeks, we'll have a new meetup and we'll talk about democratizing the workspace. So do we actually need leaders or managers? Managers is actually correct. I know Christina will be there.
Very interesting topic.
And then in 4 weeks, we'll actually have Udi Dahan doing a fireside Ask Me Anything. So these will be online in the next week. And see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks for everyone.